Because what you, the unsung heroes in the wastewater industry, do matters. Join me, Suzan Chin-Taylor, the DooDoo Diva, a longtime veteran of the wastewater, trenchless, and civil infrastructure industry each week as I deliver industry know-how from industry pros who know how. Whether you want to learn about the latest trends in technology, training and retaining great talent, sales and marketing, leadership and growth, or simply how to be more efficient, productive, or profitable, this podcast is for you. Let's dive in.
Are you feeling overwhelmed by marketing and not getting the opportunities you desire and deserve? Well, you're not alone. Many businesses in our industry have struggled with this same problem until they learned and implemented what we're going to reveal in Lifting the Veil: Secrets of Top Marketers, Time-Tested Strategies, and AI Innovation. This is a very special interactive bootcamp-style workshop being presented at the upcoming 2025 WWETT in Indianapolis. In this workshop, we're going to lift the veil on proven traditional, digital, and AI strategies that generate sales, recapture lost leads, and set you up to thrive in 2025 and beyond. Don't miss this opportunity to transform your growth and achieve your business goals in 2025 and beyond. Click the link below in the show notes for more information and to reserve your seat at this very special workshop. We look forward to seeing you in Indianapolis, February 18th, 2025. Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of the DooDoo Diva Smells Like Money podcast. Today, we are visiting with Chuck McDonald, who is APE and the Quality Control Manager at Windsor Engineers, a consulting engineering firm that has offices in the Midwest and the Pacific Northwest. So thank you, and welcome to the show, Chuck.
Thank you. Be here.
All right. Well, audience, before we get too deep into it, a little bit of a spoiler alert. We're going to be talking about some subjects today. When Chuck and I first began conversing about having him come on the show and what we would discuss, he brought up a number of topics that, honestly, I think many of you might bristle at. However, I really feel that they are important things to be discussed and to be brought out for thought. And so, without giving too much away, we're going to kick it off by talking about the engineering discipline divide. And so, Chuck, why don't you explain to the audience what you meant by that when we first started talking about that?
Well, as a civil engineer, our work is, if you're doing traditional civil engineering, it's pretty straightforward with, you work in your own discipline. But as you expand that into other, like more plant type things, whether it's in water, wastewater, or vertical design, you obviously start interacting a lot more with the other areas or other disciplines, such as the mechanical side, the electrical side. Our company is mechanical, electrical, and plumbing, as well as civil. And so with that, there's a lot of different approaches. I'll characterize it as that way, just because it seems like the whole focus is a little bit different than kind of some of the traditional civil items. And so in some respects, doing QC type work, that has caused friction because it seems like as a major civil firm, our QC is a little more specific, maybe a little more critical of our product that it seems like some of the other engineering functions haven't developed. And so that can cause some kind of friction in the interaction process. But also, there's also the background of some of the vertical construction techniques or ways that they build or bid projects are more aimed at the contractor maybe taking a larger role on a kind of a self-design process that is not the prevalent way that civil projects go. And so because of that, there's a questioning going back and forth between a civil side, let's say, and these other disciplines that can cause an irritant at times with, well, we don't usually do it that way, or we don't worry about that, or whatever. And so it's kind of from my perspective, it's a bigger liability issue. Well, we need to, make sure that we have covered what could be items of concern in the future. So
Yeah, I could see that. And so there's also comes in, you were saying that the technician versus the engineer divide. And I had heard something about this from another podcast guest that was doing access, I guess you would call them gangways, stairways, all of those access points out of metal for treatment plants and process and industrial manufacturing. And she said, often the engineer will come in and design this, and it looks great. We build it, but then it falls short of what the operators really needed, that access equipment to do for them in their daily job. And so it gets to, she said, I really encourage my engineers and designers, ask the operator how he's going to use this and let that be weighed in on the design. Because designing something beautiful that is going to leave them with maybe a safety gap, that can be problematic. And she said, because then often we have to come back in and retrofit that brand new installed piece of equipment because it doesn't perform to the way that the operator needs it to perform. And so when you talked to me earlier about the disconnect, I'm looking at my notes, the disconnect between the engineers and the field operators. This is what, I think people will bristle at, is that each group will often dismiss or, poo-poo or whatever, the other person's expertise. And I think it just comes from maybe lack of communication or understanding of the gifts that each of these parties brings to the table. And so you had discussed some ways that you thought that could be alleviated for better communication, for us to so there is we establish more of a common ground for the greater good, which is the end user client that we're all working. So with that.
Yeah. So there's kind of two areas there. The first one talking about maybe the technician side versus the engineering. The technician side, for a lot of cases, has almost been thrown out the baby with the bathwater issue that in the engineering community, let's say, we don't value, in my opinion, we don't value technicians or people that don't have that college degree, let alone the PE license. And so because of that, a lot of those people, at least more, I'm seeing more now as we're moving through a whole different generational approach that is going more into I don't want to go to school for 4 years or 5 years. I don't want to intern or, residency for 4 years to get my license. And the money's out there because the demand's out there, and the people, if they're competent, can kind of get that work. And so I'm seeing a whole new technician focus that's coming in, where the people say, I don't need to go. I'm comfortable with what I'm learning here. I feel comfortable with my education in the field on projects. And so, I can work for 8 years and take my PE license test if that's what I need to do. And I can get it without having to spend 4 years and way too much money going to college. So there's that group that may or may not be acceptable to the engineering community. I mean, once they get their PE, everything is fine. But I mean, I've been in public agencies in the past where if you didn't have you weren't an engineer, the PE was less of an issue in the public agencies at that time. But if you weren't an engineer, graduate engineer, you had a definite glass ceiling that you were not going further than wherever or whatever happens to be the case on that. So that the technician side, the whole issue with the operational side, it seems like we have elevated junior people to a higher level quickly, and I think probably the biggest missing link for the engineering community at large, especially in consulting side, is the lack of exposure in the field, the lack of opportunity to go out and be on a construction project, to have to sit there and have six contractors or six contractor people and yourself telling you how stupid this design is when you're the person who designed it. And you have that personal ownership because you've done what you think is a good job, and then they start throwing this stuff at you that, what is this guy, a moron? Are they clueless? Why did they do that? And it's a good experience for young and even intermediate engineers that is really missing in my mind nowadays, because of budgets, there's half a dozen reasons why it occurs, but the bottom line is the engineering community is really selling itself short, setting themselves up liability wise, because they aren't having people with real experience as far as, or a better understanding, we'll say, of how the things go together. And so it's a concern from a legal aspect. And so then the next logical step, if we're not going to do that, and in a lot of cases, the agency doesn't want to spend the money to have the consultants do that work, then we need to really optimize the use of the operational people on that job, and really delve into what they really need, what really works, compared to what our textbooks tell us a plant looks like, or a building looks like, or all those kind of operation maintenance type things that we just thought were okay or were good because somebody told us they were. And so it seems like, and I don't want to make excuses, but, there are people complain about, as we move into the millennials and the Gen Z, that people are losing their capabilities of good communication. And so all those things need someone to shepherd through that process on both sides, on the older operational side and the younger engineering side, which normally seems to be the case, and bring those groups together so that you can look at each other as being capable and competent, and mine that information better than we're doing. There was the whole, worry about the brain loss, the brain trust of people retiring early years ago, and it's not getting any better. And so we seem to have that large, almost donut hole of people right now. And I think most of the engineering firms are seeing that and trying to hire people in that mid-level 10 to 20 year, let's say 10 to 20 year, or even 5 to 20 year experience level. The people aren't available. And so those people that are in that age group can kind of write their ticket, whether they're capable or not. And that's what I've been seeing in the last few years, is these people move around a lot because they can demand the money because everybody's looking for them. And if they have a little bit of skills, then they'll just be able to kind of move right up, but that doesn't solve the problem.
Well, how do you see that we can, bridge that gap between the engineers and the operators and help some of these younger engineers that have not had that experience? What are some of the suggestions, or you're just thinking out loud, that we could do to help all the parties involved?
I mean, it takes a commitment on both sides, on both the engineering side as well as the owner agency side. The owner agency side, I mean, we're all doing more with less, and so they're going to tell you that, they don't have the time to send people to these type of, brown bag, or not brown, really brown bag, but, plan review type meetings. They have, it has to be more than a here's the plans, get back to me in a week with your comments, because nobody has the time to look at them. So it really needs to be a sit down process, and go through that information to have a better handle on it. You need, from my perspective, you need some type of facilitator who won't get their feelings hurt, to manage through the process. And again, draw that information out of the senior or the experienced operation people, and be able to have the engineers maybe bring them up to speed on what the new technology is, but the new technology doesn't make it a better technology. And we've found that in a lot of different areas, that something that seemed like the way to go last year is now on the shelf someplace because it didn't work. And again, needs to have that balance, or we're throwing good money after bad. And like you had mentioned earlier, we're coming back to retrofit in a matter of 1 or 2 years. And if you want to irritate an owner, at least I know when I was an owner, that was the most irritating thing there was to say, "Oh yeah, we've got a problem with this." It's like, come on, man, I spent all this money with you. Why are we having a problem with this?
Right, right. And so, often you touched on this, is that money is always a concern. Like you were saying, people are being asked to do, more with less. There isn't that time, but there's also the shortfalls in the budget. And so everybody is looking for short-term cost cutting.
Right.
And I've been trying to put this out there as a thought for folks when they're making a decision, specifying engineers or even city. Have you really looked at the true life cycle cost of whatever that thing is that you're thinking about doing? Do you choose the thing that, oh, it's really inexpensive, it's less expensive than that thing over there, but at the end of, let's say, 30 years, it might wind up costing me 3 times as much as that more expensive thing if I just done that at the beginning. And so you'd kind of mentioned the importance of, I love this, you said, of taking a holistic view. So what did you mean by?
Well, and again, some agencies are, they're not bleeding edge, but they're on a leading edge on some of that type thing. And nobody wants to be on the bleeding edge. But there are some agencies that are a lot more proactive and trying to, pull all those things together, whether it's, the whole landscaping and low, having areas that you don't have a lot of maintenance to worry about, etc. But it's still in a lot of respects, in my mind anyway, goes back to that holistic issue. And the thing that you brought up made me think about, it's like most of the agencies don't have that understanding. They're concerned about today's budget, not tomorrow's budget. And so because of that, they don't want to look at the holistic side, and B, they're not really capable to do that. And so then you have a consultant come in with their PhD guy, that the first thing in your mind is you raise your eyebrows and go, come on, really? How much are we paying for this? And what's he really talking about? And it just seems like they're not able to, I don't want to say dumb it down, but they're not able to make it to a point where even a manager is comfortable with bringing that to a city council to explain why, yeah, if we spend another $1 million here on this, $10 million job, that's a lot of money compared to a $100 million job. But if we spent it, we would save long term in 25, 30 years on that. I mean, it goes back, I go back to a project when I was the engineer for the agency as an employee, and I told them, we should be putting in a gravity system and removing this pump station so we don't have to worry about an operational issue forever and ever. Hallelujah, hallelujah. And it was, I guess I pitched it a little too hard because my elected people told my boss to write me up for being too adamant about pushing this. And it would have been spending, $2 million up front on a project that now they've spent that much in 10 years up just in upgrades. And it still is an O&M issue because you've got a mechanical piece of equipment that could have gone away. And it's just those kind of, I don't want to say short-sightedness, but how do we, on the engineering community, how do we do a better job of explaining how that makes sense so that they can bite the bullet and spend that money?
Right. It's that old adage, pay me now or pay me later.
Right.
Yeah, it does. It makes a lot of sense. Now, one of the things that you brought up that I really like this subject a lot too, as we wrap up, is the concept of the P3, the public-private partnership model. And I've seen a lot of success with this in following when it's been adopted, in that it is really allowing communities to do a bit more, money wise, to do their projects the right way, rather than just relying on the coffers that they have. But when private investment gets involved to improve the community, what a difference that can make. And so, you were saying that the potential benefits where I like this, where the engineers become more embedded and accountable to the municipality. And so I kind of want you to explain what you mean by embedded and accountable. Like, what makes this different than in working in that model than other models that we all know and love and are comfortable with?
So I've got kind of a two-faced approach to this because I'm not a big proponent of private operation and maintenance of public facilities. I mean, I'm not a fan of that at all. So on that side of it, it's a short-term process where that interaction is. But I really feel like that the private, in this case, the consulting slash engineering community needs to be more, I don't want to say adamant, but more committed to the clients kind of on a long-term basis. And obviously, the clients, that may cost them some more money. They may have to ante up and say, okay, I'm not hiring you just for this one project that's, a year and a half design and 2 years to build. So I'm, only committed to you for this. But it needs to be, in my mind anyway, a little bit more agency commitment on a bigger picture. But then the consultant needs to step up. If things are found during the process, they need to be proactive in fixing it, and taking responsibility for change orders, not just passing the buck and say, "Oh, bummer, dude, we didn't know," or whatever. But be more committed to those clients. And maybe that's how you do it. You do it for a period of time, and not just the project, because the projects, always overrun. You're asking a consultant to put a budget together that's, 4 years long, and hopefully inflation doesn't rise, or hopefully people issues don't come up and you're able to maintain your current staffing or those kind of levels, but that never happens. And so there's, a definite commitment by the consultants to bite that bullet, whatever they're committing to, but it's by the agency too, to be a little less tight on the purse strings, I guess, and look at that in a little bigger picture approach, so that the projects can be, I don't know, just the cradle to grave part of the process actually goes all the way through, so that everybody is happy. I mean, if I could go to the operation people, going back to that, if I go to the operation people a year later and not have them spend all their time griping and complaining about something, then we've got a win, and we've actually got a successful project. But when they're complaining the day after you leave, as soon as they take ownership and operation of the process, there's a problem there, and it's not their fault. It might be their fault because of that part of the communication and in that involvement. And when I was working for public agencies, I sit these guys down. I say, here's your chance. I need to know what is good or what not is not good, what'll work, what won't work, and I don't want to hear about it tomorrow. You got your chance right now. I need to know. And if you don't have anything to say, then you're done talking. And so, I mean, it's kind of, everybody has to commit to it. Everybody has to be invested in it. And, and then we need people that are kind of qualified to facilitate that process through, so that we come up with that solution.
Yeah, it comes down to, how are you going to get what it is you need unless you open your mouth and ask? Make a statement. Like, you can't, people aren't mind readers. And so it's that accountability on both sides, like not, putting it all on the engineer's shoulders, that, oh, well, you should have known better because you're the guy that went to school and has those fancy initials after your name. But we all know that what is that kind of contractor tell me? The only perfect project is the one that hasn't started yet.
Yeah.
Because on paper, everything looks like it's going to go according to plan, but in the real world, things happen. And I really like your idea that after it's finished and it's built, it's been commissioned and you turn it over, for that engineer to stay around for a while, because that bugs are going to come up. Even in an ideal world, there's going to be few little things and tweaks and things that might need to be made. And wouldn't it be great to know that the engineer is going to be there, that as you iron out those kinks in that new thing that you just brought online, that you're going to work together to make it operate the way that everybody dreamt and envisioned when they first started designing it, that it was supposed to work.
Yeah, and just on the engineering side, yeah, just on the engineering side, all the engineers, if you were talking to them to hire them, they would talk about lessons learned and going through that process and educating their staff. There's no budget for that. I mean, that's all overhead. Nobody, you can't even get your guys to write a project overview to put in your business development packages usually, because nobody has the time to do that. Either they're moved on to the next project or whatever. And so, let alone the whole lessons learned part of what really was wrong with this, what was our side, so how can we easily fix that compared to what was, these other contributing problems that we have. We can touch on those and, we change our specs or we get more input from the operators or whatever that happens to be. But, it just goes back to, in my mind, to take more ownership. I mean, one of the things that kind of frustrates me is the ASCE does their grading of infrastructure, and it just feels really self-serving and really critical when they're causing some of those problems. And, they'll be probably the last ones to admit to that, but that's the way it feels to me anyway, looking at it from the outside. And so it just seems like, the ownership isn't totally there like it could be, and it should be, in order that we don't go down to the level of being used car salesmen.
Well, Chuck, thank you for coming on the show today and discussing these, what some might consider controversial, but I think they're important conversations to have. That bottom line was, we need to have less of an us-them attitude. We need to communicate more. We need to collaborate more. And if we want better infrastructure, yeah, it's going to mean a sacrifice on both sides. We have to make the time.
Right.
It is, if we have something that we really want, anything worth having, you're going to have to put in the effort and the time. And so that excuse of, oh, I don't have the time to weigh in on that. Okay, well then, if you wind up with something that you're not happy with, then whose fault is that?
Right.
It is. It's all going to come down to cooperation and communication. And important subjects, and especially since all of us in this day and age, we're looking at AI and worried about, hey, is AI going to take my place? And no, it may be able to help, but it's never going to take that human factor of somebody being able to say, hey, this is what's happening in the field to make it better. So again, thank you for sharing your wisdom and your insights. And for those of you listening, I hope you got something out of this. I know that I certainly did, and a new perspective on what the civil engineers do. It's tough job. It's a tough job, but somebody's got to do it, just like the operators. And so until next time, keep it flowing. And we're out. Right. I like this. Afnan, I forgot to ask Chuck this. And so we're going to take a little pause here, and I'm going to ask you to weave this in before I do the close. So I'm going to take a breath. So Chuck, thank you for sharing all of your wisdom today. Love these topics, although some may find them controversial. I really do think that they were things that needed to be given the light of day and talked about, and how important it is going to be for us to cooperate and communicate and collaborate more for the health of our infrastructure, in this country, as well as around the world, in the engineering and operations community at large. And for those who are listening, how can they learn more about what Windsor Engineers does or to connect with you professionally?
So I'm on LinkedIn. They can go that route. Windsor Engineers main civil office is in the Pacific Northwest, as we talked about, in Ridgefield, Washington. We have a couple offices in the Minnesota area. One is in Duluth and one's in Minneapolis. So there are people there that they could find. And if they wanted to contact me directly, they could contact me at cmcdonald@windsorengineers.com. It's just remember it's engineers plural. And then, or they could send an email. That would probably be the easiest way to get hold of me. So that would be the best route to take.
Excellent. Well, thank you again. And thank you, audience, for tuning in. And until next time, keep it flowing. Are you feeling overwhelmed by marketing and not getting the opportunities you desire and deserve? Well, you're not alone. Many businesses in our industry have struggled with this same problem until they learned and implemented what we're going to reveal in Lifting the Veil: Secrets of Top Marketers, Time-Tested Strategies, and AI Innovation. This is a very special interactive bootcamp-style workshop being presented at the upcoming 2025 WWETT in Indianapolis. In this workshop, we're going to lift the veil on proven traditional, digital, and AI strategies that generate sales, recapture lost leads, and set you up to thrive in 2025 and beyond. Don't miss this opportunity to transform your growth and achieve your business goals in 2025 and beyond. Click the link below in the show notes for more information and to reserve your seat at this very special workshop. We look forward to seeing you in Indianapolis, February 18th, 2025.
Be sure to subscribe to the show so you'll never miss an episode. If you're an industry expert and would like to be considered as a guest on the show, click the Be a Podcast guest link below in the show notes for more information. Thanks again for joining me, the DooDoo Diva, on this week's episode of the Smells Like Money podcast.